Hello, I'm Richard Ashworth. I'm here to talk to you about hexagram number 6 from the Book of Changes, the Yi or the I Ching, called Dispute or Conflict, Song, Dispute or Conflict. And if you have thrown this hexagram today, the odds are that you have some ongoing, possibly fresh conflict, which is setting you interesting puzzles and questions. So I will attempt to pick from this what you might do with it, and also pick out the timeless wisdom that I can see from the Book of Changes. And thirdly, in the workshops from which this talk is a highlight, if you like, we discuss how the hexagram applies to right now, how it might give us some kind of foretaste of what's going on, how we might use it in forecasting. So anyway, we have song, dispute, conflict, various different words for it. And I'm going to share it with you first because I think it's pretty crucial that you have the image of it. You can tell so much about a hexagram by the image, by where the lines are, among other things. So you can see here, starting from the bottom, the first line is the bottom line. We have a yin line at the bottom, a flexible line. We have a yang line at the second, a yin line at the third, a yang line at the fourth, fifth, and sixth. You can see the ruling line is the fifth. The ruling line is, if you like, the best line or the most typical. But the fact that it starts with a yin line at the bottom of the first step is incorrect. The yin lines should be at the second, fourth, or sixth places. It is, however, flexible. The second line holds a yang line, which is inflexible, central, and in the wrong place. Now, being central means that it obeys, or at least engages with, the middle path. So we have some indication as to what these lines mean just by looking at the picture. So you can perhaps take a screenshot, so give you a moment to do that. Or you might want to just copy these lines from the bottom. Yin, that's broken. Yang, yin, yang, yang, yang. Heaven, yang, 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 over yin, yang, yin, water. That is song, dispute, or conflict. So what use can we make of this? Well, if we've thrown it, we're being told that conflict is an ongoing thing, perhaps a perpetual thing, perhaps an aspect of human nature. And it reminds me of what George R.R. Martin said about his inspiration for Game of Thrones, which was apparently a tank full of terrapins. And terrapins are ferocious little things. If you've been nipped by a terrapin, you will remember it. And the terrapins there would be one terrapin that was kind of a king terrapin, and I guess would get the best food or whatever, and be in a particular position. And then there were these other terrapins that were apparently plotting to get rid of it, to overthrow it and cast it into the shallows or something. And George R.R. Martin saw this as being a perpetual thing, because once they had installed another king terrapin, there would be further plotting, and that terrapin would be superseded over time. And he saw that as the kind of thing that human beings do. And what we're going to do is to look at what advice this hexagram might have by looking at the individual lines. Well, the first line, as I said, is a yin line, and it's in the wrong place. And which means perhaps that it is flexible, but it shouldn't be there. And the advice that is often given for someone who throws this hexagram with that changing line would be, you need to walk away from the dispute. You need to let it settle itself. And you, I'm sure, will have come across situations perhaps with people that you manage, or perhaps with your children. But the best thing is to stay well out of it, because it will sort itself out. So that's the first line. And if we change that line from heaven over water, we're going to get heaven over lake. And heaven over lake is hexagram number 10, which has a yin line at the third, which suggests you're going to make a mistake if you persist. It says, 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps in, you may tread on the tiger's tail, which is not something we want to do casually. Second line is a yang line, therefore inflexible, but at the wrong place. It's not going anywhere, but it's wrong. And this suggests that whatever the rights and wrongs of the conflict, you are best getting the hell out of it because you're outgunned. You're about to be overwhelmed by power, might prove itself to be right. And if we change that line, so instead of having heaven over water, we're going to have heaven over earth. Heaven over earth is hexagram number 12, which is P, stagnation. It is a kind of exit from Eden, if you like. It's where heaven and earth become separated. It means that there will be chaos if you persist, I think. The third line is a yin line again at the wrong place. Heaven over water. If we change that third line, we're going to get heaven over wind. Heaven over wind is hexagram number 44, Gu, sometimes called breaking ranks. And the advice in that is it concerns a woman. It says, do not marry the woman. This woman is too strong. Now, I think the 21st century might look at that a little bit differently because Confucius was keen on things being in order, and he reckoned that a family that obeyed certain principles and stayed in order would lead to a society that was as well. It's probably not such a bad idea. But this idea that women should know their place is one that you might possibly disagree with. And when he's saying the woman is too strong, do not marry this woman, he may well be saying this woman, as Dorothy Parker said, needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle. It may be that she simply doesn't want to be in a relationship. And we might say that's a reasonable choice. And so in this case, we might interpret this as meaning that there is some corruption here, because that is the shape of hexagram number 44. There is some covert activity going on for right or wrong. I mean, there's no moral aspect to this, but there's something you don't know that's important. Someone's not being straightforward, and it might be you. And you might need to consider whether you are being entirely honest, something of that sort. Which brings us, I think, to the fourth line. So we have heaven over water, then changing to wind over water. Now, wind over water is hexagram number 59, yuan, sometimes called dispersal. And it's about radical trust, if you like. It's about the experience of simply opening our life to the Tao, if you like, to what's going on, to what we know to be appropriate. I mean, you use God, spirit, whatever, higher mind, whatever words you like, but we know what's appropriate. And this is about opening up to what's appropriate. It's about radical trust. When I was a small boy, I lived in a place called Mullion in Cornwall, which is as far away as you can get from London without getting wet. And we lived perhaps half a mile from some of the roughest water in the world, where the Atlantic meets the English Channel. And I remember just listening to the wind and having this feeling of being able to just be dispersed, just away with the wind, just letting it carry me where it was, where it would. It was a very comforting experience. So that's dispersal, which we get from changing the fourth line, just letting it go. Absolute trust. That doesn't necessarily mean it's the open door or not the closed door. It means being appropriate for the moment and trusting. The fifth line is one where you might win the argument. But as they say in sales, win the argument, lose the sale. It may not be the smartest thing in the world, but you do have a good chance of winning the argument and therefore settling it for some time. But one of the running themes here is that it's never over. So it may not be that that's the smartest thing to do. But you could do that. And it perhaps brings us back to the terrapins. Which brings us to the sixth line. And what the sixth line says something like, I think, that there are no prizes for winning, or especially no prizes for winning conflict, because you've been smarter not to go into conflict. As Sun Tzu said, the greatest generals never go to war. And the tale is told of three traditional Chinese doctors who were brothers. And one of them was revered and respected because his patients always got better. And the other one, the second one, was revered and respected because his patients always got better, but without treatment. But the most respected was the one whose patients never got ill. And this line is suggesting that we may create the next conflict by the settlement of this one. Some people will point to, I'm a history nerd, so if you're familiar, some people will point to the Treaty of Versailles as being one of the causes of the Second World War, because the settlement was experienced by many German people as not being fair and followed a period of great privation for them. And if you watch the movie All Quiet on the Western Front, which is a jarring and sobering movie, at the end they're talking at Versailles and the Germans are saying, can you please give us a bit of dignity? And the French are saying, after all that, no, we're not going to. And you can see how the seeds of the next conflict would tend to be in that. Was it worth the candle? Well, with the First World War, probably not. So to summarize, conflict is perhaps inevitable. Conflict is perhaps derived from willfulness and bad faith. Willfulness can be, conflict can be addressed in a number of different ways. But perhaps it is a feature of the human condition, and perhaps conflict will never cease. But here are some ideas as to how we might navigate our way wisely through the next dispute or conflict we come across. Okay, hope that has been of some use to you. The next hexagram, which I think is hexagram number, I think it's 7, we'll be looking at in a month's time. Do join us. Thank you. Bye-bye.